Welcome to the Friday Power Lunch, a weekly show amplifying the voices of the Virginia grassroots. Each week, we provide engaging conversations about politics, culture, and women making change. Produced by the unstoppable women of Network Nova, our motto is, when we vote, we win. The Friday Power Lunch is recorded before a live Zoom audience. Follow us on social media. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and show us some love and become a sponsor through Patreon. The Friday Power Lunch. Badass women getting things done.
So much is wrong in this world, but I believe we can make it right. We've been stumbling and falling and lost in the dark, but we can rise up. Oh, I believe in the future, but there are lessons to learn from the past. We need leaders, believers, defending the truth. Then we can rise up. Whoa. We've been sinking and losing our mind. We gotta keep it together, yeah. There's strength in our numbers. The truth will get us there. Yes, there's truth in democracy. It's the only thing gonna keep us free. After decades of struggle, no stopping us now. We're gonna rise up. Oh, yes, we are. Oh, we will rise together. Keep your eyes on the mountaintop. Yeah, we gotta believe in the future.
Member of the House of Representatives, Tom Suozzi.
This is the best campaign I've ever been involved with in my entire life. It's been amazing. I want to thank the grassroots folks all over the country and here on Long Island in New York. During this campaign, we did 2 million phone calls, hundreds of thousands of postcards, hundreds of thousands of texts, 150,000 door knockers. It's just amazing how many people contributed to our success at the grassroots level. I mean, it's so humbling to me to have had so many people help in this campaign.
Something that Tom said that I think is really important for everyone to hear tonight is that we're just hungrier than they are. We're fighting harder than they are. We made 2 million calls. As he said, we had hundreds of thousands of door knocks, hundreds of thousands of texts, hundreds of thousands of postcards, tens of thousands of people from all over the country participated and contributed to this victory. Because what's happening in the Democratic Party is we're building the biggest political machine we've ever had. Because there are millions of people who are getting up every day and deciding that they're just not going to let their democracy slip away on their watch, and they're going to work. They're rolling up their sleeves, doing the postcards, making the calls, doing the texts. And we're kicking their ass all over the country again and again and again. And it's because of the people of our party who've decided that they're going to make sure that their democracies and freedoms don't slip away. And so big hats off to all of them tonight, because this was their win too, in addition to Tom and the House Democrats.
A candidate who was someone who would finally be able to provide proper and deserved representation for the constituents and the families of the 3rd Congressional District. And so myself, the labor unions, the women who write postcards, and underrepresented communities, we did everything we could to make sure that Tom Suozzi would win this seat.
Woo! everything possible. And that's so true, because we are rising up for democracy every day. Everybody in this room, we're so glad you're here. We do need to show up, to speak up, to stand up for our country, for our freedom, and the national news, if we're tuning in, continues to remind us how important our work is in the grassroots, because we are rising up. For next Benedict from Oklahoma City. She was the 16-year-old young lady who died this week after being bullied and beat up in her school. We are rising up for her. And for the draconian news that came out of Alabama, I know you're all paying attention, but friends, you're not safe in a blue state. This election is so important. It shows us that they will not stop when they designated in Alabama that embryos are children, and Oklahoma doubling down that they're going to really outlaw birth control and Plan B. Folks, our national security is at risk. Republicans are, in cahoots with Putin. It's clear we're in danger. We're in danger, but guess what? We got each other. We got the grassroots. This show just gives us the energy and the validation that the grassroots are bringing it every day. And we are rising up for democracy. So today, I'm so glad you're in the room. Let's get our burn on and let's get going. So welcome everybody from Network Nova Live Studios. It's February 23rd, 2024, and you are on the Friday Power Lunch. And welcome to everybody from across the country. I'm Catherine White, your host, bringing you the guests, the issues, the actions. We fuel the grassroots community across Virginia and now coast to coast, because man, we get things done. Together, we are stronger and smarter. And we do like to make politics fun. So we're glad you're here. Like I said, get your coffee. Let's get perked up. This episode, so excited. Dems win again. So much to talk about here. And I want to remind everybody, if you're new to the room, we're so glad to have you. This is our national show that the Friday Power Lunch is producing with our partners in the National Collaboration Project. And so the last Friday of every month, we will be doing a show together. And I'm so excited that you've tuned in, because we are going to get jazzed up. So I want to say that today we are ready just to talk about this win in New York 3 with the Tom Suozzi campaign. We're so excited that our special guests are here. Let's give it up for Jody Cass, founder of Concerned Citizens of New York 3, and Nate Munson Palomba, coordinated campaign. He was of the coordinated campaign in New York. He was the grassroots liaison for the Suozzi campaign. Also, some badasses from New Hampshire. Not sure if they have their winter coats on, but we know it was cold when they did the write-in campaign for the Biden campaign up in New Hampshire. Colin Van Ostern is here, and Terry Norelli, and she's the former Speaker of the New Hampshire House and the former president of the National Conference of State Legislatures. Woo! And Colin has a background in politics too, but he was the volunteer co-lead of the New Hampshire Biden write-in campaign. And I am so excited that also I want to say that today we have a special guest host that will be with us. Susan Wagner's here from Marcus for Democracy, that will be joining Fennell Norton and I to talk our way through this exciting news about the grassroots. And lastly, Ellen Schwartz and Roger Bruno, songwriters and activists, and they are also making music together in their band called Too Human. And we're glad they're here, and thank you for letting us use your wonderful show today. All right, a little show business. We got to get going here. So show business. Hey, we're a friendly room. Use the chat. Tell us where you're from. Did you work on the Suozzi campaign? Were you a part of the write-in? Let us know. Use the chat to brag. Tell us all about you. And then after chat, after one, we like to turn things down. We stop the record, and that's the place to be, though, to get your burn on. That's where we have a lot of fun, and that's where we build our community. And of course, support the show. Why not? We support everybody else. Why not women getting this work done? We have a Patreon membership, and we want to say thank you to those who are supporting us. Thank you to our newest, Susan Denning. Thank you. Carlton Tolsdorf and Yiping Ni Medalia. Thank you so much for supporting us and seeing our value. Because, guys, no one is coming to save us. It's up to us. So let's get this party started. And why not? Let's get it started with some fun and joy and music with our two guests. I would love to bring up Too Human, the music duo love marriage of Ellen Schwartz and Roger Bruno. Welcome.
Hi, thank you.
Hi.
I love it. I know it's
We're
a
happy to be
fast
here.
in. It's like hold your breath and hold your hats, because you know what? You're so inspirational. And again, thank you for your wonderful show. But let's talk about you. I mean, you're putting your talents to work. You have a long career. Let's just talk briefly about what you have done, who you've worked with, and then how you got to making music that's really part of now the grassroots activists area. Go ahead. Let's let the guy who doesn't talk a lot talk. Do you have your mic?
Okay, all right. I think I'll
Thank
jump
you,
in here.
Catherine. We need that. Go ahead.
The check's in the mail. Well, we've been doing music all our lives, actually, and
Yes.
That's how we met.
that is how we met. Somebody, a mutual friend, actually somebody Ellen was dating at the time, introduced
Oh.
us. Not one to miss an opportunity. I
He's
Smart
got
guy.
right in there.
swooped right in.
Well, we found that we shared a love of music and a love of writing, and so we decided that we wanted to work together. But initially, we just worked. We didn't collaborate. We worked on Ellen's songs, or we worked on my songs, and that sort of thing. And then eventually, started writing together.
And then we were lucky enough, time spins by, and
Yes.
within 10 years or so of that, we were able to secure a position with Warner Chappell Publishing as staff songwriters. So when you're doing that, you're writing pop songs for pop artists. So Cher, and
For Cher, I know. Just Cher, let's name drop Cher. I mean, your background is extensive. And what I loved about talking to you both, one, the love for each other comes through, and that you're making music together. Your music, by the way, is good, and it stands out from other kind of, sometimes we know that when we were activists and some of the folk songs, you can't really dance and bounce around to. So you guys bring that really rock and pop.
Well, we're happy to do that.
Yeah,
We really are.
and that's what we were trained with. So we just thought, well, we're going to write the same kinds of songs that we always wrote, but they're just going to have a different message than what you. Though that one of the songs that we wrote for Cher was, as Roger talked about the other day, was called "Dangerous Times," and the lyrics were about.
Was when we were living in LA at the time, and when AIDS started breaking out in LA,
so we always
we wrote that song.
So we always had that desire to write something of import, but we were on staff. We could only go so far with it. But then we moved back east. We lived in LA all that time. We really didn't care for it. We moved back east. We're happy to be here. We worked with the best musicians and the best songwriters in LA. So we thought, we're moving back east. Where are we going to find people? And we found wonderful people to write with. And one of them was the woman who wrote the lyrics with us for Rise Up for Democracy. Her name is Margot Shepard, and she's a brilliant lyricist.
Right.
We love working with her. So, and once we wrote another political song with her called Plan Your Vote. And I'm going to drop a link to our website and the full video of Democracy.
Plan Your Vote is awesome because you use those catchy, obviously, tunes. And, that right. And then you're using them for political ads, which we need, to get out the vote. You also, your background really caring about domestic violence, your nonprofit bent, after talking to you, I really realized that for, this is a long, you care about democracy and you have and care about issues. And so let's talk about how the postcard writing piece of this, and then your work in Boston, and then how we are here today, right?
So we worked on the Obama campaign together, and Roger really enjoyed going door to door.
I do. I love canvassing because it's it's an immediate contact, and it's a real contact.
So we did that for Obama, and then when in 2017, I just lost my mind,
right?
And I felt like everybody else did, and I just ventured upon this church that was having a meeting, and I just went by myself, and this woman was speaking there. She's a local Massachusetts person, and she was all about organizing, and I had never done any organizing. Neither of us had ever done that. And they said, okay, who's going to take this job? Who's going to take this job? And I thought, well, I'll do this. And it was getting people together, and we were going to call it the postcard postcard picnic.
Postcard parties, yes.
Yeah. And so I was organizing them, but all of a sudden it just became bigger. And then Roger jumped in on that with me, and we would go to different libraries and have postcard parties. And then one of the local bookstores invited us to have them there, and that kind of spread.
It's really spread into that, yeah.
And our first campaigns were for Virginia in 2017, and we joined up with Sister District,
yes.
And our band played a benefit for Sister District.
Wonderful.
Virginia candidates, yeah.
What I think is so great about this story is how the intersection of here we are today. I mean, you started to put your talents to work in the grassroots. Today, that's what we're really talking about, is this power in the grassroots. And people that are in this room are experts and talented like yourself. And then we're bringing this to bear upon really, another way to get our message out is through music, right? And we now have 30 seconds to kind of wrap up here. So what is this takeaway? Do you want people to know about Rising Up for Democracy, or what your beautiful music you're going to be making next?
Well, we've got a new song all about how one person at a time things grow, because that's how it is. That's what grassroots is.
True.
And you talk to one person, and they talk, and it's that
we talk to somebody, they talk to somebody. Yes,
it's exponential. So
and it works.
And it works. So
our
next song that we're working on right now is going to be that, and it's got a great groove to it. And
good. Well, we're going to be grooving to Rising Up for Democracy. If we want to play a little bit of that song on our way out. Do you have that for us, Robin? And already, I love it. Somebody has their hand up. Pamela, you can put your hand down, but in the after chat, we'll be ready to talk to you. So how super. So thank you guys for coming. Enjoy the show today.
Thanks for having us, and thanks for your work.
So. Yes. Yeah, and please go to their website, everybody. Whoop, sorry, let's listen. Do we got it?
Ain't no stopping us now. When we have to rush together. 'Cause you
Bye, Roger. Thank you. Stick in the room. All right. Bye-bye. Hey, Fennell.
Hello there. How are you?
I'm so excited. You got your burn on?
I got my burn on. But I have to just say something about this song. So can I say that now?
Yes.
Okay. So the music is wonderful. And we can't forget our Black History moment. And so this is where I want to sort of make this connection. You know, the person singing in the church, and it's just all spirited. Well, this is where a wonderful Black History moment comes to life, because what happened was it was music that helped the Underground Railroad work. And there were certain songs that Harriet Tubman had that people knew what they meant, because it was illegal to read and write. So they sung. So when you think about songs like Wade in the Water, that song was to tell them that when danger was near, to get in the water so that the dogs couldn't sniff. And Follow the Drinking Gourd was the song that said, hey, follow the constellations so that you can go north. And so when they had Swing Low, Swing High, Sweet Chariot, that was to tell them to prepare, that they were getting ready to go. So music is just wonderful. It helps us today. But it was also the thing that helped Harriet Tubman in the Underground Railroad. So just beautiful.
Yes, I love it. And we always it's February. We've had in every show a Black History moment. And you've always brought something to mind that many of us, sort of look at like how important music is. And as a messenger, right? The message is in the music. And sometimes there's hidden messages in the music.
Yeah. And so that's why this song is just so wonderful, and it's so beautiful to see it. So I'm glad we were able to make the important connection.
Well, let's make another important connection. The Black Grammy winner, Allison Russell, won. And that we saw that kind of controversy in Tennessee where the General Assembly didn't want to recognize her award. And our work continues with this, right? This kind of what we're seeing in society, where Black history, Black music, Black things are not being celebrated in certain areas.
Yeah, Tennessee just gets worse every single day. It's just, but what I hope with Tennessee is we, think about national issues and the national work that we do. What I want us to think about is that what it matters everywhere. What happens in one place matters everywhere. And we just have to continue to keep connecting the dots so that folks understand that no matter where you are, we're doing the same fight.
No, I agree. And I know we're going to, in a couple of minutes, go to our segment with New Hampshire, which I'm really, really super excited. I think we both were. And I think when we talk about today, the power of the grassroots, many people in this room, most people in this room, I probably have had a hand in this win or the continued wins we see. And I think, we both are, we recognize the importance of this today, right? This, how we need to continue to work together. And that's going to be key in this upcoming election.
Yeah, I think so. Well, I don't think so. I know so. I feel inspired. Sometimes you feel a little down, and then you come to this call and you talk to all of the folks in the grassroots, and you know that we're going to be okay. Because as you continue to say, as we say, no one's coming to save us, so we're going to save ourselves. And I think the guest that we have today, the hard grassroots today on our call, shows us that we can save ourselves.
Yeah. So is there anything else on your mind that I was thinking about in the news in general that you want to just bring up before we go? Any national news, any local news? I did see the black and white gala that Delegate Don Scott had. And I know I'll just bring it to Virginia just a teeny bit today. Our legislator is going into crossover, and we're seeing some great things happening in our state. And it does show that when you do work hard, you do get some results. And we're seeing some great bills pass in Virginia today. But I don't know if you had anything on your mind.
I don't have anything else on my mind. What I am anxious to get to
is Colin, and Colin just came in the room. So we're excited. We can get started.
I'm really excited to get to Terry and Colin.
Let's do it.
It is the most fun conversation, and you're going to be so inspired and excited.
Yes,
we have the conversation.
We were buying a little time. We knew Colin is here now, so let's just get this party started with your guest coming up, the New Hampshire Biden Write-In team. Go for it.
Yes. So hi, Terry. How are you? I know Colin. Hi, Colin. How are you? So this is the New Hampshire team that actually started the grassroots write-in campaign for Joe Biden. And so what I said to you yesterday and what I'm going to say to you today is, what on earth were you guys thinking when you started this?
Go ahead, Colin.
We got to unmute him. There you go.
There we go. Off mute. I'm very sorry to come in a little bit late. I was dealing with some family things. What were we thinking? I admitted this yesterday. I was kind of pissed off at the beginning. The New Hampshire primary is something we take really seriously, not just politically, but also as a civic tradition. And I was a little worried, a little concerned, a little angry at the DNC for putting us in this position. And I thought there were some really stupid political decisions that led to this. But a lot of us just decided that we're not going to take no for an answer, and that when an election happens, voters vote and organizers organize, and there's no telling us not to. And Terry and I and some others kind of took this into our hands and said, the New Hampshire primary is happening in late January, and there's no way we're going to pretend it's not or tell people to stay home. Either of those just feel so fundamentally wrong for the values that we hold.
And we also knew, and I think we also were a little bit, to be fair, I think there was a little bit of concern there. Like, what happens if we tell people go out and write him in because he wasn't on the ballot, and he doesn't do as well as he ended up doing? So we knew there was a little bit of a risk there. But I think that kind of irritation just gave us the momentum and the passion to do what we needed to do. New Hampshire has incredible participation in democracy. We have very high voter turnout. We have, people show up for town meetings. And so we just thought it was really an important and scary moment, and that the New Hampshire primary would be the first day of the general election campaign. And so it was going to be really important.
And so then the two of you decided that you were going to do something about it. So after the fear wore off, what happened next?
Well, to be clear, and Colin and I do say this often, we may be the two faces here today, but this was truly a grassroots effort. There were probably about 20 people on the kind of, maybe I would call it a steering committee. We didn't really have a name. And, you know, hundreds of people across the state that stepped up to figure out how are we going to, A, let people know that Joe Biden would not be on the ballot, because a lot of just average voters didn't even know that. How will we let them know that they can and should vote for him by writing him in, and how can they do that? And that's what we set out to do.
So I'm imagining that sounded like a really tall order. So he's not on the ballot, and you guys got to figure out how to get everybody to write that in. And you got 20 people working with you. So what's next?
Well, so it started as just a group of us on Zoom calls every week. And I pointed out in the chat, Larry and Joan were two of those early organizers last fall on this. They're here, maybe some others here as well. So we kind of divvied up like basically volunteer responsibilities, like who's going to work on organizing, who's going to work on finding events that we could send a speaker to, who's going to work on getting signs, we didn't raise a lot of money. We raised about $70,000 over the course of 3 months. And it really was grassroots level organizing, people calling people they knew, as opposed to kind of the big programmatic version of fundraising. But you know, we got a website up. It was all volunteer driven. We ended up with 1.5 staff people, but nobody was hired for the first month. So it really was a lot of just figuring it out as we were going. I will say, I think one of the superpowers we had is there's really not a big line in New Hampshire between what it means to be kind of an activist or an elected official or party person. So Terry, for example, Terry used to be Speaker of the House here in New Hampshire. Terry also was a state rep. I served in our state government. I was the Democratic nominee for governor in 2016. But to be clear, Terry's state rep district represented what, 3,000 people? I mean, there are 400 legislators in New Hampshire. They're volunteers. They don't get paid. So in our state, the line between activist and community leader is a really soft and blurry one. And that actually means a lot of us felt empowered to just like roll up our sleeves and do it, rather than asking anyone for permission.
So let me ask another question, because I want to back up just a second. You guys said you raised $70,000, which doesn't really sound like a lot of money for all the work you had to do. And so talk a little bit about that, because we tend to think that money is everything. So can we just hear a little bit about the money that you raised and how you guys felt the best way to use it?
So I think because this was so grassroots and I don't want to say disorganized, but it wasn't hugely organized. We used the money primarily for two things. One is the 1.5 staff people that Colin mentioned. And the other was signs, and more signs. And that's where most of the money went. Of course, we had to, create the PAC and things like that, but that's where most of the money went. And we would do, initially, we would do Zoom calls with all of our volunteers, not just with the 20 of us, which we did every week, but with, 150 or 200 people who would just get on and come up with ideas. They would say, we think you should do this. And our response would be, you is all of us. So if you've got that great idea, run with it, right? That's what grassroots is. It's really empowering people to do what they want to do, what they're good at doing, what they, are creative about doing. And I think that's why it worked. And I think that's why the outcome was so great, which I would also add is why I was really excited to hear that Tom Suozzi's campaign actually had a grassroots coordinator, because I think so many campaigns, especially the more national ones for the US House and Senate and President, they forget that part. And so it becomes very top-down driven, and people don't want to participate because the campaign might not be offering what they want to do. Well, so what? Go out and do it anyway.
So let's talk about that. So you've got all of these volunteers, and you've got different communities, and so people want to do different things that they think work for their community. Can you guys talk about what that looked like?
Yeah, so I'll show you an example, actually. I have this on my desk. So this is a little palm card. It says, "Vote for Democracy, January 23rd. It has the write-in Joe Biden with the name, a little bubble filled in. On the back, it has a sample ballot where it has Joe Biden written in on the bottom. It has the paid for on it. So these came up because a woman named Stephanie in Claremont, New Hampshire said, "Hey, for the last local city council race, palm cards were really helpful. Can we do some?" And I basically said, "Go for it." And she said, "Well, what, who's going to pay for it? How are we going to, what's the disclaimer?" And I said, "Look, I'm going to send you the FEC website that addresses that section, but I can't give you advice on this. You guys got to figure it out, but you have the resources there. Talk to some other folks." They raised, I think it was $500 to make these. It just has someone's name on the back. There's not a pack. It just says paid for by George Chait. Then 2 other people around the state heard about it, and she sent them the file for these so they could make them for the Dartmouth campus and for one of the other communities. And there ended up being an NPR story about these palm cards nationally, where Stephanie's talking about how she came up with the idea. And that's just one example, but like Terry could give you 20 more of those. It was one of the truly beautiful things about giving people the freedom to not have someone tell them what to do, but to say, your community, get to work.
And I think that's, for me, I started out in the grassroots reproductive rights, doing grassroots for reproductive rights. And for me, it was really amazing to come back to the grassroots, because that's what's so exciting about it, is that so many people, there's no monopoly on good ideas, right? And so many people had good ideas, and all we needed to do was encourage them to follow through on those ideas. And for all the people that are on this podcast or listening to this podcast, you've got great ideas too. So you don't have to wait for a campaign to tell you to get a group of people together and do it.
Wow, that is just amazing. So for those who might just be joining, we have Colin Van Osteren and Terry Norelli from the New Hampshire Write-In campaign. And this is just amazing. I am just so inspired already. So let's just let's just take this from the top. So there's no Joe Biden on the ballot. You guys are going to make sure that he's on the ballot, and you're going to have to write it in. So now you've got 20 volunteers, and then you got hundreds across the state. What's next?
I think we knew we had to do 2 things. The first was get the word out that he wasn't on the ballot, but that people could still vote for him, and how. And then the second was just spreading that and getting volunteers. Our second big thing was to get volunteers to staff the voting locations with write-in Biden signs and sample ballots. And so we had people that just reached out and said, yes, you can come talk to our group. We reached out, said, hey, we have people that are willing to come talk to you. Let us know where and when. And they would let us know. And we would find, mostly from the 20, but even beyond, hey, will you go talk to this group about this effort? We had hoped to, and it was a big hope, to get 50 opportunities to speak. We had more than 60. And then through that process, and I know Colin mentioned that Larry and Joan are on the call. Larry and another of the 20 volunteer really kind of started organizing, found people regionally to organize local that could then find people in the local to come stand at the polls. So those were the two big ways. And then, as I said, letting people in local communities do what was working for them.
So I love the story about the signs because you guys had to make a lot of signs so talk a little bit about how all that happened and how folks came together to make those signs.
So for the record, I don't always believe signs are the answer. It's kind of a long joke in New Hampshire about people asking for more signs and not. It did really make sense in this case because write-in campaigns are very unusual. No one here had participated in one before. And yet showing up at the primary really is a civic tradition. People take their kids. My kid's school is closed on that day. So we knew a lot of people were going to show up, but might be confused. So we really wanted to get them at that moment. We knew that they were there for a reason, but help them visually see the fact that the president's name won't be on the ballot, but that it's easy to write him in, how you can do it. And so we had the idea of having and we also thought, frankly, it's just a good way to organize. There are 303 polling locations across New Hampshire. And so that way you could have kind of somebody in charge of finding volunteers for each one. And then above them, someone for the region, kind of a volunteer phone tree. What came out of the volunteer calls that we did, well, Terry, you want to explain the kind of how we ended up with the sample ballots and the QR codes?
So, well, when I say great ideas, so somebody emailed me one day and they sent me a QR code that they created that would take people directly to the Write in Biden website so that they could get the information they needed about how to write them in. And then the other issue was sample ballots are really helpful. In New Hampshire, though, every voting location has a different ballot because they rotate the names. So we couldn't just take one ballot and reproduce it across the state, but it was pretty expensive to have individual ones. And so somebody came up with the idea to kind of blur the names so that you could take one ballot and make it something that could be replicated for every polling location. So in addition to the Write in Biden signs, typical signs that we had out on lawns and at the polls and everything, we also had a sample ballot. And both of those were ideas that just came up because somebody was on the Zoom call and said, hey, I'll do this.
It just seems so passion inspired that people were so engaged and motivated. Any ideas about what you think pushed people to be so inspired, except the two of you and all the other 20 people who started all this?
Well, I think Colin talked about that a little bit in the beginning. If people knew, if they followed kind of politics of things, they knew that the DNC wasn't recognizing New Hampshire's primary, which is in our law and run by our Secretary of State. So that primary date wasn't changing. And so that gave us a little bit of passion, like, we'll show you why New Hampshire has the first primary, because we do things, right? And so I think that was part of it. And I also think that people were afraid, right? They know that Biden has done so many good things that the stakes in this election just could not possibly be greater. And that, as I said before, the primary is the first day of the general election. And New Hampshire is a swing state. So what happens here in November is really important. And so I think all of those things, and the fact that it was grassroots, that people got to step up and do what they wanted to do, those were the motivating factors, I think.
Can I just add one thing also? Yeah. This also, I think it's why all of us are on this call. Our democracy itself is at stake. Yes. And I think there are a lot of people who realize that, people who get looked on or discounted by pundits and political parties, sometimes, frankly. And so like a lot of what motivated people was the stakes of the election and the fact that we knew we were going to be the first votes counted in 2024. We had a responsibility. It doesn't matter what a political party tells us. Doesn't matter how many editorial pages, look down on the idea. And they did, to be honest. Everyone was saying we shouldn't do this. It was good for our democracy, probably also really good for the New Hampshire primary to show that we participate no matter what and that we're stubborn and we care about the issues that are at stake.
Agreed.
That has been fantastic. So I know that Tom Suozzi is here, and I know that you guys want to see and hear him too. I hope that you'll stay for the after chat. So stay for the after chat.
So I want to say
thanks for having us.
Thank you, Terry and Colin. Thank you. It's so inspirational, and I know everybody in the room. Listen to this story. You got an idea, do it. Don't wait for anybody, because as we say, no one is going to save us. It's up to us. So thank you so much. So exciting. So let's bring up Susan Wagner and Fennell, stay around, and let's bring up Tom. Where's Susan at? Oh, I guess it's okay. We're doing some spotlight work. Hey, Susan. Okay, let's just use this segment together to bring up Tom since he's in the room. We know he's taking a much needed vacation. Susan Wagner's here for Marcus Democracy. Tom Suozzi, welcome to the Friday Power Lunch. It's so great to see you. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. The vacation is over. But I want to thank the New Hampshire folks for their great work that they did. That was really wonderful what they accomplished. And I love that idea of just don't wait for anybody. Just go do it. That's what we need to do to save our country. The founders always said that democracy will never work unless the people are involved. And you can't count on the parties. If we just count on the parties, then the parties will take care of the parties and they'll forget about the people. And that's what's kind of happening in our country right now. And you're the people. And I just want to say, I know Jody, who's a superstar on our team. You'll hear more about her. And Nate, another one of our superstars, is going to speak to you about everything that happened. And Susan Wagner is on here as well. I don't know if she's going to talk or not, but Susan called me up early on with Jody and they said, hey, we've got to get you more involved with the grassroots groups. Everybody treats the grassroots groups terribly. I said, I love the grassroots groups. I need the grassroots groups. The problem is I've always been kind of boring. I'm like, let's work across party lines and solve problems and make the world a better place. That doesn't get many follows or many tweets or many small dollar donations. But in my campaign, because it became such an important race nationally, grassroots supporters like yourselves, and I see a lot of faces on this call that helped me, really powered our campaign. We had thousands of people writing postcards and making phone calls. We did 2 million phone calls. We did 150,000 door knocks. We did 400,000 texts. We did, I don't even know how many hundreds of thousands of postcards we did because we can't monitor them all, but I know, people received 5 handwritten postcards. And our victory was not only because the candidate is so wonderful, but because we had great Democratic turnout in our race. And that turnout was very much powered by the grassroots that reached out to people throughout our district and encouraged them to run on a February 13th election, both in early voting and absentee ballots, but then also during a blizzard, or maybe not a blizzard, but we
call it a Suozzi blizzard. That's the snow Suozzi.
Yeah, I love it. Vote for Suozzi, not for Mozzie. You guys don't know the Suozzi song. We should play the Suozzi song for you.
Do we have a Suozzi song? That's awesome.
Suozzi, 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 a Democratic guy, elect him. Anyway, that was my father's campaign in the 50s, but it's. I have a great folk singer who sang it as well for me on the campaign. You can look it up online. Maybe Susan can put the link up, or Nate can find the link. Nate, stop your talking to people over there. You got to pay attention.
Yeah. Well, I love it, and I want to say
moving off now that the campaign's in he's not goofing off? All right, good.
No, he's not goofing off. So we're so excited to have you here. And Susan Wagner, I love this story because a lot of it centers on relationships. I mean, you knowing Jody, you knowing Susan, and then the ability for all of us to work together so quickly, right? I mean, you must have just come into the room and said, who are these people? I mean, the thought that you didn't really know about the grassroots movement we're going to talk about today, and then here we are now. So that is great.
And I see people on here Sundays for Suozzi, like Ellen Bender, I went to law school with, and postcards, what is it, Markers for Democracy, right. And I see a lot of groups on here that are my groups. So I'm just very, very grateful to all of you, and you really made a big difference. It made the difference in the race, and I'm very, very grateful to all of you. Keep doing what you're doing. Support other candidates that you believe in and that will have an impact. I'm just wanted to come on and say thank you. I'm grateful to you. It means a lot. Susan and I know each other I was the county executive of Nassau County. She was the deputy comptroller of Nassau County. And we worked together back then. And she and Jody and Ellen said, hey, what are you doing? You got to take advantage of these folks. And I said, yep, bring them on. So I'm glad you did.
I'm glad you were open to it. Thanks. And now you can go take your jacket off and relax. Congressman Suozzi.
I've got to go write a speech. I was out looking for office space. I have to write my speech. Watch the speech on Wednesday, the 28th. Okay. That's my last moment in high profile. So watch my speech on February 28th, where I'm going to tell
when do you head
Congress to wake up.
When do you head to Congress? Like, are you going to be seated like
February 28th?
So we'll see you over
there on the 28th.
You'll see me on C-SPAN on the 28th, giving my speech to all the members of Congress and telling them to wake up. People are sick of your bullshit.
Yeah, well, Jerry Conley is from our district. Stay close to Jerry's been over in NATO in Brussels, and Congressman Conley's from Virginia. Just pal around with him. Tom, you'll be
friends with him already.
Oh, good, good. So thank you so much. It means so much that you came in the room, and to all these people doing the work to be recognized and validated. Thank you so much. And go write that speech. And, if you need editing, I know we'll help. So
I'm talking to Bill Clinton at 3:30. So let's see if he has any good ideas.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay, great. Well, tell Bill we said, hey, all right. All right. See you later. Thank you for coming.
Peace and love. Thank you, everybody. Really appreciate you.
Woo. Oh my gosh, Susan, was that super great or what?
That was great. Tom and I go back a very, very long way. And he didn't quite say this, but he really was, well, he did sort of allude to it. He was unaware of the power of the grassroots. And the first meeting he had with the grassroots groups in New York, I switched the tables because normally politicians present to us. And I said, we know all about you. We need you to know about us. And each group explained what they could do. And he was just honestly dumbfounded. He was like, I didn't know these people existed. And, picking up on what Terry was saying, the fact that you can have an idea and go with it and not have to be dependent on the party was something that I think Tom kind of was like a little confused about originally, but then he sort of got it.
Yeah, well, I think that's our superpower. So when we learn this permission structure, a lot of us in the grassroots don't listen to it. If we did, we wouldn't be here today. I mean, and good for us that we keep moving. So I do want to say, and what the Get Your Burn On, we have our torches burning here because I want to talk just 1 minute about the article in the paper that, like you said, the pundits and polls discounting this movement, saying maybe we're burnt out. And the reply back was, fuck no.
Right. So, so most of you are aware that New York Times front page had an article about us being burnt out. And, we're far from it. Tom would not have won had we not been as aggressive as we've been. Yes, we're tired. We're not the only ones who are tired. If you read the Bulwark today, they're tired too. But that doesn't mean that we have despair. And that doesn't mean that we're giving up. And we can sort of, power through this because there is a lot at stake here.
There's a lot.
Yeah. And
no,
so
yes, and I agree, because the idea of being burnout, I think that's different than like we're refreshing. This is why we come together every week, right? When you're constantly resisting, you may get burned out. We are acting, and we are doing acting that results in, we see the results and the impact, which gives us the power to keep moving. If we just sat there and resisted constantly, you can get burned out. But what we're doing in community is a lot different. So let's just get this party started. I want to make sure we give some time to the great team that, the story behind this with, let's bring up Jody Cass. Jody, it's so great to have you, founder of Concerned Citizens of New York 3, and then Nate Munson Palomba, grassroots liaison with this amazing grassroots team. They found Nate that served as that nice little connector between the party and the grassroots. But let's start this story with, I'm going to hand this to you, Susan, a little bit, with Jody Cass, because you have this, I love the relationship trust thing that I think is so important. So let's start there and let's roll.
Right. So I just want to add one other point, since most of us here are women. We all know what it's like to have children and get them to various activities in school and do our community services and do PTA and have to raise a family. And we're tired through that, but we plowed through it. So we have the wherewithal. We just do have the wherewithal. And I think that's often very underestimated. Okay, so let me just start by saying that I'm going to turn it over to Jody and Nate very soon, but just to contextualize this relationship. Jody and I had worked together many, many years in the Ed Koch administration, and we did affordable housing together. Then we had Santos, and Jody and I landed up on the same Zoom speaking about Santos. And it was clear that Jody was going to take over Concerned Citizens of New York, or create Concerned Citizens of New York 03. And she sort of recruited me to help her. So I used to be her boss, then she became my boss. And Jody really plowed through this. She really did. She kept it going. If it wasn't for that grassroots group, Santos would still be sitting there, because all the political people and the people in Congress were upset, but not enough to do much about it. And Jody let them know that they'd be in the spotlight. So while Jody was working on Concerned Citizens, I was simultaneously working on sort of getting the grassroots respectability, visibility, etc. And I would talk to her about that quite a bit. By the time Tom announced, Jody was convinced of the power of the grassroots. And so when Tom announced, one of the things she said to him is, you must speak to Susan, because Jody and I had this trust relationship, and Tom knew me from our years working together in his administration. That made it much easier. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jody. And my first question, Jody, is tell everybody a little bit about how you like to say you came out of the woodwork, because a lot of people listening here have come out of the woodwork. And I think they would really appreciate hearing sort of how you came out of the woodwork, but you came out strong and powerful and accomplished.
So thank you. Thanks for inviting me today. Yeah, so I had retired back in 2020. And I had worked in the trenches for many years as a lobbyist for affordable housing and cleaning up toxic waste sites and other things. And I was just infuriated when in January of 2023, all the garbage came out about George Santos, and that he was actually going to be my representative. Every time I saw him on TV, I just wanted to vomit. And I realized I had to do something. And I also saw that there was a need for the community's voice. So that's why I created Concerned Citizens of New York 03. I had run a couple of nonprofits previously. And I just wanted to make sure that we could amplify the voice of the people. Not that it should be a sour grapes that, Democrats versus Republican, even though our steering committee was mostly Democrats. But that was the reason why. So we created this entity, and we doggedly for 11 months worked to try and make Santos's life miserable. And all the freshman Republican members of Congress from New York who were just giving us lip service, we tried to make their lives miserable. My first involvement with these grassroots groups was through Markers for Democracy and Susan. Actually, we got some a postcarding effort to the constituents in these, I think there were 5 or 6 districts, asking them to call their member of Congress to ask them to do the right thing and get Santos, if he won't resign, he needs to be expelled. So that was kind of the beginning. Is that what you were looking
for? So Nate, you, when Tom sort of said, okay, you guys in the campaign, you have to embrace the grassroots, whether you like it or not, because I told Susan and Ellen, who I went to law school with, that we're going to do that. And then you did get flooded. You did get flooded, in part because it was a special election, and, all of us grassroots groups, we thrive on this energy. So we have to keep going. We do not stop compared to, when you organize a campaign and people kind of helicopter in and leave. And, we want to keep going. We want to keep the enthusiasm up. But my question to you is very specific. What strategy did you use when you were inundated by all of us who really wanted to help? And the reason I want you to talk about that is, as we go into the campaigns, we need to know what we can do better, how we can access campaigns and present ourselves in a way that's the most useful and make this whole energy package, so much easier to accomplish. Because I think in part,
Definitely.
some of the resistance is we just don't know how to deal with all of this. So better to, right.
100%. And I think that, one of the big things we were doing early on here, like 2 days after the election was called, is setting up pipelines for groups and individuals to get involved and making those instructions really, really clear, right? So there's like a couple different ways we got folks involved. One, I know many of you are familiar on this call with joining our phone banks and the postcarding sessions that Markers for Democracy organized. So that's what I would call an organization kind of feeding into a structure that we were able to create. Now, what I do want to add is that many groups that I worked with organized their own phone banks. And I towards the end, especially as things were getting really, really crazy, and we were dealing with 150 folks all phone banking off of our same link, with our same 4 or 5 folks, helping them out. And I want to shout out the Grassroots Democrats HQ here, as they did tremendous work with us kind of supporting our phone banking efforts, as I know they've done in Virginia in the past. But I also want to shout out the groups who, I was pushing them to, hey, you have the tools. Lincoln about the Arlington Democrats, for example, you have the tools to execute your own phone bank of 30, 40, 50 people. You don't need my help. What you need is for me to give you those specific tools, like the links, a slide deck, a training deck, a volunteer FAQ. But you've been doing this for 3-4 weeks at this point. And I think one of the big things, the answers to that question, is about elevating volunteer leadership, and in particular, elevating those established groups after they've had a chance to work with us for a little bit. Say, hey, you guys go off and run your own event. We trust you. And we trust that you guys are going to be in communication with us and stick to our messaging. That's another piece I want to mention here is like one of the big things that often happens between grassroots organizations and hard side campaigns is the campaigns feel very tight about what messaging they want to be used, what they feel comfortable going out to voters in their district, especially when we're talking about volunteers from all over the country, right? And I think that one of the key roles that you, that Jody, that others, that some of our group leaders and myself were able to play is get those together and make sure that the groups understood the importance of sticking to the messaging, and also making sure that our campaign understood that, hey, these are groups, these are trusted folks, these are not crazy people, these are people we can trust to take our directives, and they're going to follow suit. They work in swing districts all over the country all the time.
Right. Actually, I want to emphasize that point, because what Nate is really saying, but not as directly, is that the Suozzi district happens to be pretty purple for New York, and particularly since a lot of the help was coming from New York City, which tends to be more progressive. He had to walk the line of basically saying, you might not agree with all of this messaging, but we need to win this race. So I have to give credit both to Nate and to the grassroots groups who understood that they couldn't just advance their own policy agendas, that they understood that we needed to win the district and were willing and not fighting with the campaign. This was the message. And they stuck with that. And I think that shows an evolution in grassroots groups, because I think historically grassroots groups kind of wanted to, sort of get their agendas out there through the campaigns. So I appreciate that you brought that up. Do I have one more minute with Jody?
Yes, of course we can go over a little bit. Everybody in the room, just get your second cup of coffee, because I am telling you what, I want this deliberate and strategic way you guys work together, Nate and Jody, and this whole team is so key for us. So yes, please, Susan, keep on rocking.
Okay, so Jody, maybe you could speak a little bit about, because you were new to campaigning and a little new to Grassroots, what your first impression was of all of that, and then as it worked itself out, what your last impression was of all of that.
Sure. So, so I was on the campaign before Nate was, and everybody, like it felt like a tsunami was coming over us with all the groups that wanted to come and do stuff and help, and it was. There was a lot of sensitivities in the district because of some of the stuff that had happened in the past in terms of messaging. And so I was getting all the groups mixed up. A lot of the groups have the similar words, blue and swing and streets and all the rest of it. And so I reached out to Susan and Ellen from Markers for Democracy, and they helped to guide. We started putting together a spreadsheet, and I was just so inundated. And I also was responsible for delivering Great Neck for the district. And that was where Tom's opponent was from. And we had a moribund Great Neck Democratic Club. So I was rebuilding that at the same time. And so I needed help, and I was screaming and shouting for help. And so they said, "Oh, we've got this young man coming." And I said, "Okay, great. Make sure he knows what I need him to do." And then Nate came in about 20 minutes after he was there. I saw he was going to be running circles around me because I didn't even know what the word turf meant at that point. But I do think that the relationship part is something that's really important. Tom trusted me. I've known him for 25 years. Nate, I don't think you knew him beforehand, right? So I was the one telling Tom how great Nate was, and how he didn't really need me to be involved as the gatekeeper any longer. But also, the relationship with Susan and Ellen and the Markers people was really important, and the role that they played. I do think it's important to try and institutionalize this to the extent that we can. We have so much information about the capacity of these groups, and I'm not just talking about postcarding or letter writing and phone banking. I mean, the Demcast I reached out to, and they helped on some social media stuff. Obviously, donations. It just goes on and on in terms of the breadth and depth of the capacity that these groups bring. And so, the question I think on the table right now is, how do we strengthen that infrastructure, build, and then institutionalize it so that it is used in a way that it's not redundant in making sure that we have, for example, I think there are 5 or 6 districts in New York that we really want to flip. Some of them are going to be easier than others, but they all have different needs. They all have different messaging. They all have different strategies. And so understanding what those strategies are, understanding what the messaging is for the candidate, and then figuring out who should be the traffic cop, who should be plugging in all these resources to each campaign, I think is going to be crucial.
Yes.
Okay, so now here's a little delicate question for Nate. Since most of the women who you were working with are probably old enough to be your mother, or maybe some of us your grandmother, how did you find working with all of us who also brought obviously a lot of professionalism and expertise, but clearly we're, great deal of generations apart?
I mean, I'll say it was an honor to work with so many of you all, and I'll say, having worked in campaigns, for 6, 7, 8 years here, there are different types of field programs and activist groups that can exist in a district, and definitely around the country as well. I want to say something about this group in particular is that people really kept their eyes on the prize, right? We did not allow emotions, roles, people feeling like they're in charge, not in charge, like who gets to run this one, who gets to own this Zoom, like, et cetera, et cetera. Like, that stuff was really kept at bay. And it was really clear, like, we have 60 days, we are going to win this election. It is all hands on deck. There is no task too small and no task too large for anyone to handle. And I think that is sometimes the distinction is, I've been on races where, volunteer communities end up being about some level of ego, which is totally understandable. I totally get that. And frankly, I often say that, what we're here for is, both to win elections, but also for community and validation and engagement and working together and being part of something. And we were able to do that and make us all feel that we were part of something larger, myself included, without it breaking down into who gets to earn control, who gets to feel like that. And I think that's just really, really important as a lot of groups work together, especially in 2024, that, this is frankly not about us, right? This is about the country. This is about the voters, and this is about the election, and making sure that we're all like in that service, organizers included, right? I think sometimes organizers like to feel like they always know best, and that the grassroots doesn't know best, and that the organizers know from the Hard Side campaign. And it's important that we dispel that as well, right? Mm-hmm. And I felt many times I was taking advice from you, from Jody, from other activists, like, this is not working for our phone bankers right here, or like, we need to do it this way. And so I think that give and take is really critical.
I actually find that very liberating. When you don't have egos involved, it is so liberating. I mean, when we were working on Sundays for Suozzi, we were just a group of 5 or 6 people that just said, we want to do Sundays for Suozzi. How do we do it? What's common sense? How do we bring all these people? And it was really liberating, for that not to be a part of it. Yeah, so I guess really go ahead, Catherine.
Great. Yes. Jody, go ahead.
I was just going to say that really came from Tom, and he really wanted to empower the staff. He sent notes telling people, I want to empower folks. I just want to also point out on the messaging, there were a lot of people who really wanted to push, anti-MAGA and, taking back the House. That was not the messaging of this campaign. It was not going to, let Tom win. Tom needed to focus on the things that the people in the community, day-to-day stuff that they cared about. And so I just, you asked for advice, and I just think it's so important that, folks who are in the grassroots might feel that they have the answer. They think abortion's going to win. Abortion didn't win in New York. But, you have to rely on the candidate.
I'll disagree with you a little bit, Jody, because I think it did. I think he ran so much. I think the immigration thing, yes, but I really believe because of Rose's here and Fabia on the doors, the women that opened, it was abortion. I think we lost the House last time because the blue voters didn't really hear the message, but they were at risk. I think you did an excellent job. Tom did an excellent job with all that messaging around women's rights and abortion. And I think it was that, and he was authentic, and he really did, like you said, didn't run from those immigration, questions about the border, which I think, I don't want to step on it, but I also want to say that I think that people get the message that there's so much at risk. So
just his strategy. I just want to
yes,
strategy is all about bringing people together, the bipartisan.
Right. Yes.
People are sick of this. Let's bring people together. And the issue, he wanted to deal with the issues in a secondary way. And that was the winning, that's really the winning message. And I think that's a big part of what's going to happen going forward if Democrats want to win in purple districts.
No, I agree. And I think, Jody, to your point, the messaging piece, I know right away when I tuned in for this campaign that it was clear to us working on it that we all were in concert and listening to Tom's message and issue. And that's where we took the lead from. And I think that's a good point. And I wanted to say before the wrap up, one, I'm just so excited to have you all here. But Nate, you said something, and Jody as well, and Susan, about the strategic part of this and how is this a test case? What do we learn from this, these points, these takeaways? But Nate, you said it really supercharges you for the 2024. Wrap up with that, and then we're going to go to a wrap up, and then I hope people can stay on past 1 o'clock because I want to hear from the volunteers, the grassroots in the room as well. So go ahead, Nate. What are you thinking about? Feeling supercharged?
Yeah, absolutely, definitely feeling excited.
Nate, why don't you tell them what you're working on, where you are, and what your role is?
Of course. So I do work for the New York Democrats. And have worked for them and for different New York Democratic candidates for many years, formerly with now our Lieutenant Governor Delgado when he was a congressman. But I'll say that in New York this year, we have 7 highly competitive congressional races, second only to California in numbers of competitive races. And so it makes it all the more important that we emulate this structure for other races. I was involved in the races in 2022 when we did not win most of these very competitive races. We only won one. And, you know, we have our eyes on defending Representative Ryan, but also winning 3, 4, 5 others on Long Island and also upstate. So it's incredibly important that we maintain the relationship with the grassroots as a party, right? And that party continuing to understand the value that they bring, in particular in New York State, and in Manhattan in particular, where there is so much energy and also not those competitive races. But around the country as well. I'll kick it back over to you, Catherine.
Yeah, super. We're supercharged today. We're supercharged because I think we can look at, like Susan, we talk about all the collaboration, and that's why this national collaboration project, where we are working together to stop the redundancy, to make sure that we are getting the message right for that candidate and working in concert. And I think this election, it's just so important. Thank you, Jody, for being here. It was a pleasure to get to know you and just to hear about, it's the power of relationship and trust that's also there that's so important. Nate, rock on, get supercharged. Let's win those House seats back. Let's make sure that we do in this election, get all that going on. So let's get, I want to make sure we wrap up with, bring on Fennell again. Thank you, Susan Wagner. Stay at the after chat, please. Everybody hang tight. Fennell, what are your thoughts on your takeaways?
Okay, so this was amazing. And so 2 things. For New Hampshire, I'm going to say that the unbridled power of engaged grassroots activists is invaluable to any campaign. And for the Suozzi team, I'm going to say that communication, working together, and keeping your eye on the prize is what wins the race.
Eye on the prize. I love that. And it also, for me, the takeaway is, man, when you don't like the way something is, or you really feel strongly like Jody did, but the Santos seat, she was like, no way am I going to sit here and allow my democracy, my voice be silenced, right? And then also we saw that in New Hampshire, they were like, not going to listen. The permission structure is, you got to stand up and do it. I think for me, that's the biggest lesson. And then working together to be deliberate and strategic. So I want to make sure that I thank everybody and the grassroots people in the room, in the chat. So exciting to see how many of you worked on this campaign. So thank you for coming in today. And next week, you don't want to miss next week. We will have Congressman Jerry Connolly here talking about NATO, talking about what we see happening in Ukraine and with the Putin interference. And we'll have Antonia Scatton here talk about messaging. Also, Kate Bassett from the Courier Newsroom and Elizabeth Griffin from Pink Threads, because it will be Women's History Month. So thank you for the patrons. We've had some new ones. Robin, ding, ding, ding. We did have people become a patron. Thank you.
Sybil Burgess?
Yeah, thank you. What's the name again?
Sybil Burgess.
Sybil Burgess, our hero. Yoo-hoo. All right, everybody, hold tight. And thank you also. I wanted a special shout out to Dennis Orsinger, who was helping today, and she's learning how to be part of this video sharing. And you did great, Dennis. And Stephanie Brown, our spotlighter today. And of course, the whole team. Thank you. Let's roll credit.